Well, it's another full disclosure day, and it's awesome. We have Peter Fisher back with us again to discuss some more investment opportunities for people out there in just kind of things that we like to get everybody kind of educated on, because there are some great options. You don't have to just go from one piece of real estate to another piece of real estate. There are other options, and some of them, lots of numbers. You got to get pretty familiar with some internal revenue codes. But the first thing we want to talk about today, Peter, is internal revenue code 721. What is that?
All right, thank you, Eddie. So the internal revenue code 721, often referred to as an REIT, gives individuals the ability to defer the tax on an investment property by contributing that investment property to a real estate investment trust. And they do that. That process is done through the internal revenue code. You defer your tax, and you're essentially, I'm going to use some air quotes here, exchanging your property for operating units of the REIT. And the REIT generally holds its real estate through this partnership, and you become an owner or a member of that partnership through the 721 strategy and deferring your tax. So you can essentially sell one property and invest in a, say, $1 billion portfolio of real estate.
Oh, wow. And so do you have REITs that are just kind of there saying, hey, we have X amount of dollars to spend on, or we're looking for X amount of dollars of investment for this kind of a thing, and you can just say, we've sold our building, we've got 45 days, and you can turn around and be like, hey, we have these 1, 2, and 3 REITs right here for you to choose from.
Sort of, Eddie. We don't work directly with the REIT. We work through a structure called the Delaware Statutory Trust. And the Delaware Statutory Trust, which we talked about last time, is a structure that's available for accredited investors to exchange into through a 1031 exchange. So what we will get into is a complicated transaction in which we internally call it a two-step transaction, where you sell your investment real estate. Okay. Through a 1031 exchange. You defer your tax to a large institutional property through a Delaware statutory trust. Okay. That Delaware statutory trust has then been targeted by a larger REIT, real estate investment trust, for acquisition sometime down the line. So let's call it 2 years later, because the DST still needs to follow the 1031 exchange guidelines. So it needs to qualify as an investment property for probably at least 2 years, right? Okay. Okay. Everybody's going to talk to their tax advisor about that.
Exactly. We are not tax advisors.
That's right. So the first step is 1031 into a DST. Step 2 is 721 into a REIT. Those 2 steps are both tax deferral strategies. And now you are a owner of operating units of this larger diversified portfolio of real estate that is likely paying you a very stable income stream.
And just what would be the interest for, like, because we talked about DSTs, and they create an income stream that could be relied upon. Why should I want the 2-leg process? Like, what would be the type of situation where that would be a better idea?
Sure. So let's lay out 3 scenarios where investing in a real estate investment trust through the 721 process is beneficial or could be beneficial to an individual. So number 1 is diversification. Okay. You're able to go from a single property in a single market into a larger, potentially diversified portfolio of real estate. It can be diversified through asset class, through geography, through lease type, etc. So diversification is a big one. If you're nervous about being in one property, that's a useful tool. Number 2 is liquidity. Once you are in the REIT, based on that REIT provision, you have the ability to sell your ownership units at a certain period of time. A lot of REITs say after 1 year of ownership, you can sell. So you can control your liquidity and control your tax liability. If you own 100 units, you could potentially sell 10 a year over a 10-year period, knowing what your tax liability would be. A third reason that many of our clients utilize this 721 UPREIT structure is for estate planning, because now you have operating units, and upon death under current tax regulation, those units would be valued at a step up, wiping away any of the tax that was potentially due by the original owner. Those heirs would inherit the units and could potentially sell those units very quickly. Depending on the provisions that the REIT sets forth, a lot of times it's on a quarterly basis, but compare that to a real asset or a DST. That's a longer cycle. Can you sell, etc. And I'm going to add a fourth one. I know I said 3. If you are concerned about 1031 exchanges, the Internal Revenue Code being changed in the upcoming years, the 721 UPREIT might be a solution for you.
So, and then it's the REITs, because, I own some REITs in investments, and there's a share price on them. They have like that. Is that how you don't say, hey, I want to sell a unit or so, or is it more is it a style of REIT that's a bit more connected in that way, where you are connected into the number of units and not owning a share price of the REIT?
Right. So the operating units look and feel and act very similar to a public share. And the type of REIT that we're talking about is a non-traded public real estate investment trust. And the words, if you follow that, says a lot about the structure. It's a public entity, but it's not traded. So that means the board of directors are going to set a net asset value price, typically on a quarterly basis. So that's when you know what the value of the REIT is going to be. And when you sell your units, the conversion of your units to shares is considered the sale, and that's your taxable event. So when that conversion happens, it happens at a net asset value, whatever the number is at that time for that individual REIT.
And I can see for estate planning how beneficial this could be, because with a stepped up cost basis, if somebody wanted to just liquidate a small portion who was an heir, they could do that, and kind of with the benefit of the stepped up cost basis, probably have a non-taxable event.
That's the idea. And of course, we have to say under current tax policy, as everything that we've talked about today has been challenged in the past year, except for the 721 UPREIT structure.
Okay. And that, so to kind of pivot a little bit, there's also from the tax bill that came in during the Trump administration, I believe it was one of the only bipartisan pieces of this legislation where Senator Booker from New York kind of got this provision for opportunity zones into the tax code. And opportunity zones, I believe, are for any asset class. So how would, if I come to you and I want to know about how I can invest in opportunity zones, what is it and how can you help me do it?
All right. So as you indicated, Eddie, the opportunity zone investment strategy was introduced with the 2017 Tax Reform Act. And it essentially gives individuals the ability to defer tax on capital gains of nearly anything that you're selling. So this could be cryptocurrency, It could be a hard asset, this classic guitar, classic car, whatever has a gain on it, you can essentially defer the gain by investing that into this qualified opportunity zone. There's about 8,000 opportunity zones across the country that were all set by the governors of each state and approved at the federal level. There's essentially two components of the tax benefits. That is deferral and elimination. And we're February 8th. So the one other tax strategy that benefit that expired on December 31st was the reduction of your tax liability. So on 12/31 of 2021, we no longer have that tax benefit, but we still have the ability to defer our capital gains. We still have the ability to eliminate additional capital gains beyond that. So
okay. How do we defer, and then how do we eliminate?
We defer by investing our gain tax only. So just the gain amount of the sale of any asset that you're selling. So if I have,
I sell, for example, I let's just use real estate. Right, where I'm not selling any crypto right now. So we sell a piece of real estate. It's $2 million. We make $1 million of a margin because we bought it for $1 million, and it's doubled in value. So I don't have to replicate any debt. I don't have to do any of that. So I have to just take what the gain is, the taxable amount.
Right.
Okay.
So in this case, $1 million. The other million is your cost basis. That goes back into your pocket. We take 1 million, we invest it into a qualified opportunity zone. And we have to follow a number of provisions in order to benefit from these tax strategies. One of them including improvements. You need to improve that property by at least $1,001 to start. I'm going to leave it at that because it gets a lot more complicated.
Okay.
If we do that, we are going to defer our tax until December 31st of 2026. That is a drop dead or a sunset date on your tax deferral. December 31st, 2026, when you file your taxes the next year, you owe your capital gains tax liability to in this case, because most of us are probably in California, the Franchise Tax Board doesn't recognize this. So you've already paid your state tax. 2026 comes, 2027, you're paying your tax. You're going to owe the federal government your tax liability at that point.
Okay.
That investment then continues on. You hold it for a total of 10 years. Any gain above that $1 million, let's say your investment grows to $2 million because it's a ground up construction project. 10 years later from today, that extra $1 million in growth is tax free.
And will there be is there an expected liquidation point where that, or like, is there, let's say you're in it 11 years and you're like, hey, all of this, there's this huge gain, it's grown, and I now want to liquidate it. Is there a way to liquidate, or do you have to wait for the opportunity zone fund to follow their procedure to liquidate?
Right. So in what we're discussing now is a way to actually make the investment into the qualified opportunity zone, which is through an opportunity zone fund, which is something that we work with. Again, these are accredited investor strategies where we'll set and structure everything for you through our real estate group. So you're actually investing in a fund that is going to be developing and operating certain types of real estate assets, holding that property for 10 years. They're going to physically look for a sale of that asset at about year 10. Of course, it might not happen. There's no guarantees that at year 10. But to answer your question more specifically, Eddie, is yes, you're relying on the manager of that portfolio to sell the real estate to achieve liquidation.
Okay. All right. But the reality of these funds is once they hit the 10-year mark, that's really where the benefit has arrived. So the capital opportunity for them the door opens at that moment. So therefore, they're probably going to do it within that time or within, you know, a year or two of that time frame. There's no real advantage for them to sit around waiting for another 5 years or anything like that.
At this point, we don't know if there would be more advantages at year 10, because that's 10 years down the road. Yeah. But yes, the business plan is to sell at year 10 as soon as that last investor qualifies for the 10th year. And in the meantime, these are ground up development projects. So you'll receive income once the property is occupied and stabilized. They have, many of the funds have provisions for cash back strategies prior to December 31st of 2026 through financing. So what I just said there is that the assets, once occupied and stabilized, will likely refinance from their construction loan, send cash back to the investors, which can help you pay your capital gains tax.
Oh, wow. When it comes due in 2027.
Right. Every fund is different, but this is a common strategy in the industry.
Wow. And then you still have you'll still have a portion of your investment invested in the 10-year kind of strategy for growth.
Correct.
So it can be these opportunity zones can be a good option for somebody who's maybe, hey, retirement, I have this building, we've had it a long time, maybe, you know, I don't want to be dealing with the maintenance, the tenants, that kind of stuff. And it's a good time to liquidate the building. I could cash out to a opportunity zone. I will have some tax to pay in California because that gain is treated as income. But the feds don't want to get paid until 2027. And I can invest in one of these opportunity zones, and in 10 years from now or thereabouts, when it cashes out, if that's when I'm retiring, it would be a tax-free event.
That's correct, in a nutshell.
Okay, so interesting strategy. So kind of to wrap it up, if we somebody is like, okay, I need to know more. How safe are these? How do they connect with you? How do they contact? How do they learn more?
Sure. My company is Sequent Real Estate and Wealth Management. We're a San Francisco-based organization with offices in Los Angeles and Denver. My phone number, of course, you can always Google us or use your favorite browser. My phone number, yes, although, is 415-918-2225.
Perfect. And then can you spell Sequent? Just
Sequent is SEQUENT.
All right, perfect. .com. Very easy. Awesome. And then Peter, as always, we have other stuff I want to talk through on our next time, a strategy of somebody who's lived in a single family home for a very long period of time. There are some interesting strategies there too. So to the next time, I appreciate you coming on and explaining this, and thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.